So Beth here. I am a women's coach. I'm a mom of two, and I am a community builder in the Las Vegas area. And for those of you who have watched this podcast before, Unmasking Motherhood, this is my first official in-person interview, and I'll introduce my guest today in just a minute. But for those of you who don't know the heart of the podcast, I wanted to take just a minute to share why Unmasking Motherhood exists. And the true heart of the podcast is because we go throughout our lives putting on masks, whether we realize it or not, to feel safer, to fit in, to feel like we belong, which ultimately gets us further away from the true belonging we desire. And one of the ways that I believe we can create more genuine connection in our lives that we deeply all need as human beings is through the power of sharing our story and hearing another's. And there's such beauty in witnessing other people's stories. It is a gift to have this woman on the couch next to me. It is a gift to listen to people share a part of their story because it makes us feel less alone. And it makes us all feel connected to each other. And one of my favorite things I like to say is that we're all more alike than we're not alike. But we like to believe that we're different and measure ourselves up to the mask. And let's just take that down, can we? Even for an hour while I sit on this couch. So, welcome to Unmasking Motherhood, if this is your first episode. I would love to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Cassie. Hi, Cassie.
Hi.
Hello. So, yes, let me tell you just a little bit about how I met Cassie before we jump in. So in 2020, I had to think back this morning, what year did I meet you? It feels way longer than it really was. So I got pregnant with my second daughter, now living in Vegas. I had my firstborn in St. Louis, and we did I was gonna say home birth. It was not a home birth. I was terrified of home birth, actually. And then in 2018, I had my firstborn, and we did midwifery care within a hospital birthing center. Fast forward a couple years, moved to Vegas, and I got pregnant end of 2021. And I think it was early 2022 when I reached out to Cassie and was interviewing midwives because at the time we didn't have a birthing center and I just didn't want to go the hospital route for a number of reasons. And so wanted to interview a midwife. And my first birth, there were maybe 6 to 10 midwives at this hospital, and I never got to pick who would be there, right? Whoever was on call was the midwife I had. And I'm I love the idea of building a relationship with my care provider, getting to know her, feel comfortable with her, and then they even come to your home ahead of time. I loved it. So Cassie was the first person I interviewed, and I knew right away. But you still want to do your due diligence just to make sure she's a specialist. She's great. And I interviewed a couple other people, ultimately chose Cassie, and I got to know her really well because for the next, I would say about 7 months, we had almost weekly at one point, monthly, if not weekly appointments. And then she offered 12 weeks postpartum care. I did not even know that existed, and I said yes to all of them because why not? So that's how I met Cassie. She's been to my house. She's seen all the things. She has helped deliver my baby. And I love her so much. And she was someone who I was a little nervous to ask to have on the podcast because I'm you're just this badass midwife, mom, doing your life. And you said yes to be on the podcast. Yes. I'm so excited.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm nervous too. Excited.
I told her I get nervous for all of these, so yes, you're in good company, and I hope these are really fun. And what's different about my conversation with Cassie today is that we're going to talk about her motherhood journey because yes, she's a mama, and also about her journey into midwifery, and then debunk some myths about midwifery, just talk a little bit more and educate you, the audience, about midwifery. And maybe it's something that you know a lot about, but you could share with a friend in your life that is pregnant or considering having a baby. So here we go. Let's have fun and talk to Cassie. This is the first part, right? So we talk about the mask, the exterior. If you don't know Cassie, she's going to share a little bit of her backstory. So give us any fun details leading up to when you were born, starting from when you were born to present.
Where are you from? I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up in a suburb of Kansas City on the Kansas side.
Okay.
There's 2 sides for those that don't know. And I lived there all the way until I graduated high school. I was a dancer growing up. I always joke that was my first language. Very, very shy as a child, but loved dancing in the stage and performing. And my parents were very adamant that I would go to college. And I had several scholarships and acceptance to great schools, but I felt like I needed to leave and go my own path. So I started dancing professionally right out of high school.
What were your scholarships for?
Academics.
Okay.
Yeah, academics. And ironically, the two big schools I considered for mom and dad was USC and NYU. How far could I get from Kansas City? I was ready to fly.
Yeah.
So the day before my high school graduation, I flew to Chicago by myself and auditioned for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. And they called me on my 18th birthday, which July. And I left in August and went to the Caribbean and started traveling.
Wow.
So I did that, 18. I did that for a while, till I had my first child.
I'm gonna close the door in case Jacinta comes
okay.
back.
Yeah. So I worked as a professional dancer for many years, about, let's see, like 15 years. That was my first career.
Long time.
Yes, yeah. And I was able to travel a lot. And the whole time I was going to school because I love to learn.
Wait,
so
really?
Yes.
Virtually, I assume?
Well, originally no, because I'm older, so we didn't have virtual school at the beginning. But when I lived in New York City, I went to Hunter College through City University. I went to UNLV here in Las Vegas in the early 2000s. Once when I was on tour with Radio City Rockettes, I did do virtual with the new school.
Being a Rockette in the house.
So I did do virtual for a little bit there through the new school, but so I've always loved learning as well.
Wow.
And then I had my first child at 33. So that was the end of dancing for me.
When did you meet your husband in there?
So
very
actually,
mobile job.
My second job after the cruise ship brought me to Las Vegas. I danced with Siegfried and Roy at the Mirage, and my husband worked backstage. And he asked me one day at a picnic to go get a Frisbee, and that was that.
Was it his pickup line?
Yeah,
did he have a crush on you, or did you find out later?
I think someone in the cast was like, hey, there's this new girl. There were a lot of marriages that came out of that show, like probably 30 over the years.
But no one married a tiger.
No, thank God.
If you guys don't know what Siegfried and Roy, please look them up. Very famous.
Yeah, magicians with tigers. That was their thing. So yes, that's when I met him. I was 19. So we dated for a year and a half, kind of off and on because I had the need to keep traveling.
Yeah.
But we always kept in touch. We were really good friends. So I moved back to Vegas after September 11th. I had been in New York City for that, and I was like, peace out.
Ooh.
So I came back. All my friends had moved back to Vegas as well from New York.
Yeah.
So I moved back, and I called him, and he didn't call me back for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. He left me hanging. He knew I was moving back. And then that was that. So that was 2002.
2001 was that?
Yeah. So
how long after that did you get married?
We got married in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the year you became a mom?
2006.
Okay.
So I have 3 teenagers. I'm in the teen world right now, which is a whole new, yes. And I kept saying, I love being a mom of teens. So right now, 17 and a half, 15 and a half, and 13.
Wow.
And I was like, I love being a mom to teens. And the last 6 months, they have really thrown me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm like,
There's been a shift.
Oh, this is teens. Yeah.
It was too good to be true.
It was too good to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
where I'm like, every once in a while, I'm just look at them and I'm like, where's the rational human that used to inhabit this body? Like even as a kid,
How do I
there
bring
was
this
some-
back?
Yeah, but it's
Uh-huh.
as a teenager, there's moments where I'm like, what? How does this make sense at all right now? Yeah, so that's fun.
Shout out to the teen moms watching.
Shout out to the teen moms.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started teaching two to drive, so I'm teaching two to drive at the same time. And that to me is a whole new level of parenting. That requires so much regulation of my nervous system.
Yeah. On many levels.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's something.
You're in it in a different way. Like, you know, when you're a mom of littles.
Yes.
Oh, you're in it. Like,
Yes,
you're in it
totally.
in a different season of life.
Yes,
way.
I feel like this is
Serious
revisiting toddlerhood in a way. Like, which if you're in like late elementary, middle school years and you think it's calm, sorry to like let you know that it is relatively calm compared to like toddlerhood to teen.
Yeah.
It's like having toddlers, but now they have more independence.
Mm-hmm. And you're like finding that balance of independence meets your boundaries and your rules,
Yes,
right?
keeping them safe and also giving them, which that's toddlerhood too, keeping them safe, but also giving them space to explore and get to know themselves. And wow, I didn't put that together, but it is. Yeah.
Who's better at that? Like, or more natural at that boundaries meets like freedom, you or your husband?
Me.
I haven't met him, so I would sort of like, he's, that's not an easy thing to do.
No, but just, I'm
Pushing
doing
ourselves
all
a
the
lot.
driving teaching, and even the other day, he was like, what, you're like going on the road? And my daughter and I were like, yeah, that's kind of what happens when you learn to drive. And he just is, he's more
You gotta get him out there.
detached. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, take me back to motherhood. So 2005 is when you found you were pregnant, or 2006?
I found out early 2006. He was born in December, so I guess like spring maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you? I had a December baby. It was like March-ish, April, when I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Was that a shock and a surprise, or were you trying?
I was trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you knew you wanted to be a mom. Then.
Yes.
I'm always fascinated about how people stumble or not so much stumble into motherhood.
So when I was growing up, I did not want to be a mom. I was like,
Do you know why?
I didn't. My home life growing up was very unstable. So I think that was a lot of it.
For sure.
And like I said, I was obviously looking for independence to kind of break away and find my own path. And so motherhood, I didn't include that till probably mid to late 20s.
There was a shift.
Yes, I remember thinking one day, imagining I know what it was. I was taking acting classes, and one of the exercises we would do would be talking about ourselves at different age. Like you're 5 years old, talking about yourself. You're 10 years old, all the way through being an old woman. And I remembered being an old woman, and there were children. I had a family. And so I thought about that would look like not having a family, and I realized no, became really important to me.
Dang, what a pivotal moment! Just from you probably weren't expecting
No.
that day. Like,
No.
I think I might be a mom.
Yeah. So like
For
probably
sure.
mid to late 20s. So when I ended up moving back to Vegas and reconnecting with my husband, he really didn't have a choice thus.
You're like, this is happening. So if you wanna.
Yeah, and I knew, and I actually remember saying that to him, asking him, well, what do you think of kids?
Yeah.
And he was like, and I said, well, I want to be a mom. So I'm just letting you know that if you don't, now's your time to speak up.
For everyone to be.
Yes.
Because that would be a deal breaker at that point for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we got married in May, and we'd known each other so long that once we were married, I was like, let's have a baby.
Let's get this party started.
So we did.
And he was on board, obviously.
He was.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, ready or not, here comes the ride of motherhood.
Yeah.
I love that. There were things I didn't know about your backstory.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would add before we?
I had some detours in there. I went to design school. Thought that I maybe wanted to be an interior designer at one point. But then got pregnant and realized that wasn't really what called to me.
Because at that point, were you retired from dancing? Or what? I wanted to ask you about that.
So my plan was to go back to Siegfried and Roy, that show where I first met my husband, and retire, like just coast along there till whenever. And 6 months after I joined the show was when Roy was bit by a tiger, one of the lead magicians. There was an accident, and my husband was actually backstage, saw the whole thing happen. I was in the dressing room.
So that on the news back in St. Louis.
Yeah, it was a big thing. So then it was like, okay, now what?
Yep.
And that was the last big show I did. I did smaller shows after that, but that kind of was the end of my dancing.
What year was that?
2003.
Okay, so pre-children. Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, that's when I enrolled in design school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And catch us up to speed. Are you an interior designer?
No.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say that took in my intro.
No. That's why I was like, it was kind of a side path.
Yeah.
So, one of my meanderings.
With the dance background, like, I was always, interestingly enough, drawn by interior design. That was my 8th grade book report of, like, this is what the career I want to go into, was interviewing interior designers through, like, snail mail.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's, I mean, not that all dancers want to be interior designers, but I feel like that artistic part of our self-expression, there's many avenues that it could be placed, right? Yeah. And she has a really cute office. I feel like if you guys were here, you'd get, you can interior design your space, right?
I mean, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
It's like, not that it's my, greatest gift in life, but I really enjoy it. So
it feels, it's enjoyable. Yeah. It's life-giving. Yeah. You're gonna, cool.
So, So I was enrolled in school when I became pregnant the first time. And I actually graduated 3 months after my first was born.
Wow, so you kept going.
Yeah, I was so close, just to finish,
Okay.
Yeah.
Early days of motherhood, did you have support around, and what did that look like?
So, ironically, a home birth midwife, I had my first in the hospital.
Okay.
I got an epidural at 2 centimeters.
Wait, they can give them?
We generally know. But they were like, this woman, we gotta help her.
You're struggling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, all of them were born here.
Okay.
Yeah, I was raised that childbirth was horrendous and terrifying and horrific and something you had to suffer to become a mom. And I was really afraid. Luckily, a lot of my friends were having babies at the same time, so I had support in that regard. And they did not grow up with this quite as intense programming around it, so they were a little more laid back, which gave me some confidence.
Yes.
But I was really afraid. And came home from the hospital with him, and we had said, asked my mom, give us a week to kind of find our feet a little bit, and he came almost a week late. So she got there the day after we got home, and my husband and I were both like, thank God.
Oh, you were glad
we were glad.
Worked out that way.
Yeah, because we needed help. We were very overwhelmed.
Did you have support living in town at all?
No.
Okay.
Just friends.
Yes. Yeah.
They were having their babies too, which actually was amazing to have friends to be like, what is this?
Right.
This happened. Like,
this
how do you handle this? Yeah. That was really valuable.
Just to bounce off things and that support community. That's everything. Yeah. And you waited, what, was it a year and a half later? Not waited.
They're
together.
Almost 2 years apart, just under. Yeah. I had pretty severe postpartum depression after my first. So that was rough.
Yeah.
And not able to articulate what I needed. And I think what I encountered was very much the attitude by my husband and everyone else of like, people have babies every day, what's the big deal?
Right.
And I was sitting in this space of like, oh my gosh, they were threatening and no one listened to me in the hospital, and it was scary.
Oh.
And
do you think some of it was post-birth stuff that you were processing that played
I think
into?
that started it.
Yeah.
I definitely think that.
Mhm.
And then just that I was living in this place of huge shift that we go through when we become mothers, and everyone else around me, except for my friends, were acting like no big deal, life just went on. And I was like, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were you expecting that?
No,
Yeah.
I wasn't.
So it caught you by surprise a little bit.
Yeah.
Looking back and when you were in it, would you have guessed that it was postpartum depression? Or is it more like hindsight, like, oh, now you can see?
I knew in the moment that it was,
Okay.
but I didn't. I think I knew what it was in the moment.
You were aware something was off at least.
I knew
like
something
this is
was
not.
off.
I feel
Yes.
not right in my
Yes.
own body or mind
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really stayed in that and didn't come out of it until really after quite a ways after my second was born.
You were just
So-
in it for a couple years, a few years then.
I was in it for a
Yeah.
few years.
Mm.
Yeah. So she was born at home, my daughter.
Okay,
She
so we went
was-
from 2
I-
centimeters
I
dilated,
did.
give me an epidural.
Yes.
Yeah, this is not even a big time
No.
between this one
Yes.
extreme and the other.
Yes, but I think that says a lot about how I felt walking out of my birth experience and my entering into motherhood was
Yeah.
it was really disconcerting.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got pregnant with my daughter, I knew something had to be different. So I kept interviewing different care providers, like would start care with someone and actually really
Okay,
liked them.
so you knew you didn't want to go back to the same person?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The person that did my first birth, I had never met
Oh, okay.
until that moment.
Was it just like the doctor on call
Mhm.
or something? Yeah.
It was big practice. I'd never met
Mhm.
him.
Yeah.
I did actually encounter him probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago as a doula in the hospital, which I was like, oh, this will be interesting to see if he's what I
Yeah.
remembered. And
Yeah.
he was not great.
Still going.
mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. But then I had my daughter and started looking for a different path. And when I was all the way at the end of the pregnancy, I was 8 months, and my OB said she was moving out of town right after my due date,
Okay.
like 2 days after.
Wow.
So I should hurry up and have a baby. And I was like, no. So I decided to have a home birth.
At 8 months
At
pregnant?
9 months pregnant.
At 9 months pregnant?
Yeah.
This is like the wild streak that whenever you're like, I didn't know about you with your parents wanting a certain upbringing for your life, and then you're like,
Yes.
nope, curveball.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
literally at 9.
Yeah.
Wait, did you have any exposure to home birth prior to making
No.
this decision?
No. And I say that,
Home birth
there is a
certainly-
wild streak in me, there is, but I also am someone who like really, really researches and agonizes
That's
through
the side of you I
decisions
see.
and- Yes, like very analytical.
Really thorough,
and-
yes.
Yes, that's generally how I make decisions. So I still kind of sit in awe of who this person was that was like, no, I'm not doing that again.
It was like your body almost said it for you. Like, I
think
just
so.
can't do this.
Yeah.
Did you find a midwife or was this a free birth?
So I had a doula and
Okay.
I asked her to be my midwife.
Amazing.
And it was actually her first midwife delivery, which again, I look and think, what in the world? Yeah, I generally am not someone that makes
Yeah.
choices that way.
She had been at births before.
She had,
This
she's
was-
been to at least 100.
so if anything was to go wrong, like you
Yes.
trust. Oh,
Yes.
did you know her personally before? Or just
Mm-mm.
wow.
I
And
just really trusted, just
Yeah.
knew it was gonna be okay.
And everything was
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just like in awe.
Telling the
Yeah.
story, I'm just kind of like, whew,
Yeah.
because it's not really how I operate for the
Mhm.
most part, so.
But I think it also speaks to, I'm relating to this to motherhood, but even though you've had another moment earlier on, like deep down, we as moms, I've seen parts of myself rise up that I never even knew were there to advocate. Like if where I couldn't make others comfortable or play it safe, because my whole body was like speaking for me, but it just felt so much of a no that I had to choose this sometimes even scarier, like unknown path, because the latter, the alternative, I just couldn't do.
Yeah.
There's everything in me was like, no, this is not right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously baby number 3, you're just like home birth, or that was
Yes.
your way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love this. I love hearing new parts of friends too. Like I hadn't heard this part of your story. Yeah.
Yeah. When you had mentioned earlier about talking about midwifery, and I was like, my mothering journey and midwifery are very intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I know that you mentioned doula. Like, when did that come into play in your story?
So when my youngest was around a year and a half, and I worked between the births of all of my kids. So
doing what?
After my first was born, I judged dance competitions.
Oh, okay. Got the dance world still going in there. Yeah.
That was fun because I would like go out of town for a weekend, but I was still mostly home.
Yep.
So that was cool. And then after my daughter was born, I worked in entertainment management here. I managed go-go dancers at one of the hotels.
Oh, I knew that. Yes, yes.
Which was tons of fun.
Yes.
And again, it worked really well. I mean, I was able to not take work that didn't accommodate my prioritizing motherhood, which is a privilege, I know, but that was really important. And also cost effective, because most things I looked at, even entry-level interior design, I was basically going to work to pay a babysitter. So I needed to find something that made it worthwhile.
Totally. So you were the primary person at home during the day with the babies, and then evenings or weekends were. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I always am curious how people set it up. Like I've talked to women with so many different backgrounds of how if they're stopping career for baby or bringing in help and how that looks. So. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But then when my youngest, he was around a year and a half old, and I had been considering midwifery. I just knew that I do better as a mother working. I learned that about myself as a postpartum after my daughter, after my second. I was super adamant and very vocal when I was pregnant with my third. Like I would say to my friends, please check in with me once he's born. Ask me how I'm doing. And I was very vocal about what I thought I would need. And my people really showed up for me, and I did not have postpartum after that birth. And it was so, I remember being like, this is so easy. Having a preschooler, a toddler, and a newborn was so much easier than any of my other postpartums, just because I had better support, largely because I figured out what I needed and how to ask for it.
So much there that I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes, like, you might never have known had you not had a second baby to use that voice and advocate.
Totally.
I feel so often people don't even think they need help the first baby. Like, I'm fine. I have someone coming to make a meal one day. And I'm like, that's not going to be enough. That's really cute that you think that's enough.
Right, that's what I was like,
oh, my husband
cute.
has
that's
1
cute.
week off work.
Yeah.
And then half the time, if you're in the hospital, that might just be a couple days that he's home. And I'm like, that's really sweet. And obviously, this is not everyone is privileged to be able to have help or fly people in or whatever, but we need so much more. But even just, maybe it's a free text message to your friend saying, and that takes so much vulnerability to do, to admit that maybe at that point it was easier, like, I'm just going to do it. But it's not for the average woman to admit we need help.
Totally. Yes, we're conditioned, and I think we take great pride in meeting that conditioning that we can do it all.
Yeah, holding all together.
Yeah, we can do it all.
Yeah. So
and we can't do it all when we have support.
Can do it all when we have support. Yes. So that third time around, when you had your people like just checking in and rallying around you, you said you didn't experience like not just baby blues, but like postpartum depression or anxiety. Do you attribute it to the care, or
I think part of it was the care that I had midwifery care postpartum, because it's way more supportive than standard obstetric care. But I think the other part was just that I knew I had talked about it so much, and I had gotten vulnerable with my friends about what I had experienced before. And so they had a better understanding of what was happening, and asked for that commitment for them to check in. And the flip side of that was, in return, I promised to tell them if I was having thoughts or whatever was happening. So, and that just knowing that that was available really helped me settle down, I think. And knowing that, not knowing, but expecting and accepting that it could be messy, right? Like after the first, I had this idea that I had to have my clean house all the time, right? And I had to have dinner on the table, and I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
So I've got to be the I have the clean house and the laundry and the kids looking.
Pressures we put, that mental load, but the unnecessary load too. That
Yes.
we're like, we're putting this on.
Yes. And then even more so with my second, now I've got my little girl, and I think there was a lot of her birth and childhood that really triggered my childhood experiences. And so by the third, I was just like, it's not gonna be cute and tidy. And I'm okay with that. Yeah. I'm okay. And the house is gonna be messy.
Yeah. I mean, that it just speaks to the power of the power of not feeling alone, because your community was checking on you.
Yes.
And how much when you feel in isolation, even though people might be like, hey, how's it going? But where you can actually go deeper and really share how you're doing, and people really see you. There's a difference in like, here's your meal, or like the surface stuff, but like the deeper layers that can like cure isolation, especially when you're like hunkered down in the home in the beginning. And then also the mindset of just how much we put on ourselves that doesn't need to be there, that affects our mental health. So what I see is like just a transformation of you throughout those 5 years, that I think there's so much here that I know will be getting women's wheels turning, because some of the women listening are pregnant for the first time, and some are pregnant for the second time, and then some of just children aren't gonna have more babies, but that they're gonna see parts of themselves.
And I have to shout out actually one of my support system. She was there, my neighbor across the street, we share a birthday. So we always are like, have a very special connection. And she was always very present around the births of my first two, but with my third, I swear she fed me dinner every other night for a year.
What?
And I really think she saved my life.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
What amazing.
I mean, she was the mom, even with my second, she was the woman who was like, hey, I'll bring you something to eat after the baby's born. My mom actually took my oldest to her house when I was literally giving birth that morning. So she was very involved always. But after my third, she just stepped up in that way. She would it started out by her calling or texting and saying, hey, I made us chicken pot pie, I've got extra, I'm gonna bring it over for you. And she continued to do it, literally, I swear, every other day for probably a year.
Is she a mom? Was she a mom as well?
No, she's not a mom.
Gosh, so she didn't even fully get it in that full sense, but was she one of the people that knew? Like, did you reach out to her?
Yes.
So she was aware, but she was in your corner.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she's just a really
amazing
kick-ass
human.
Woman, yeah.
Heart of gold.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, practically speaking, just for people to have examples of like how your community came around you.
Yes.
And that was the meals.
Yes, that was a huge one. I have another memory of one of my best friends that I was telling you about. We just spent 4th of July with her.
Christine.
Yes, she came over and she had her first two are very close in age to my first two. She only has two. So when I had my third, I remember her coming over, and I'm holding my youngest Indio, and there's clothes on the table that need to get folded, and she's like, hey, I'll fold these for you. And I was like, no, hold the baby. And she was like, no, you hold it, I'm gonna fold. What else can I do for you? And at that point I was like, I've held him for the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I would like to fold the laundry.
Yeah.
Really. But
Yeah.
her awareness of like, I'm not coming to hold the baby was huge. I'm coming to hold you. That was huge.
Yes.
And then the awareness that I really had set that boundary for myself to the point where she was like, no, I'll do the dishes. What do you need me to do? I'm not holding the baby. And I was like, no, really, I've had so much support. I'd kind of like to see what he looks like from a distance.
Yes,
we're
connected. We're
you hold
bonded.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, we did it. Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, but those were kind of the two things that I found made the difference for me.
So the hands-on support, someone that I think this is the brave part of friendships too, that aren't just gonna take what you're saying for face value, like, no, it's fine. The ones that kind of push back, or that you feel like you can even push back with, that is like, I wish more women would feel comfortable doing that. And I think using our voices and saying what we really need and just not feeling guilt about it. Like, that's just crucial. But people, so coming in your home, so seeing other human beings aside from the little baby, housework, meals. And it's not so much more than just the meal too, especially when you're generally feeling loved and cared for to that human.
And I think what's so extraordinary about that, and I see this in myself, is the intention when something happens of like, oh, I'll bring you a meal right after birth.
Yeah.
But her seeing that it wasn't just right after birth. And she took it as an honor to bring me my first postpartum meal, which I thought was so beautiful. So it wasn't just that though, it was seeing it through and the consistency and just showing up even when I didn't ask. That was like life-changing for me. And she still does that. It's who she is, she still does that. Yeah.
What a special human.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That could be a game changer for if every mom had a woman like that in their life. I mean, our landscape of maternal mental health would look so different. It's equal parts speaking up about our needs. And you have to kind of know what they're going to be first. But goodness.
Which that I think is tricky with first pregnancies because it's hard to know.
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah. That was really sweet to hear, Cassie.
Yeah.
What an awesome friend.
That's kind of my welcome to motherhood.
Yeah. Well, I would love to segue a little bit into midwifery, but they're all connected, like you said. So I love to ask this question on the podcast, but I'll start with motherhood, and then we'll transition from this. So if we really knew you, what would we know about your motherhood journey? If we really knew you, what would we know about your motherhood journey?
I think it reflected a little in just my birth choices and how that had shifted, but just I went into motherhood with this expectation that I was I'm the adult, I'm the grown up, right? I'm the parent, and that was kind of a stagnant, not finite, but like stagnant thing. And how much motherhood was my growing up too. And becoming much more conscious. Huge, I feel like 180 shift from when I had my first to who I am as a mother now. And there's a lot of dysregulation, which as a midwife, doesn't work. So most people that know me professionally don't really see me get flustered. Yeah. Because, I tend to, the more kind of hairy things get, I get calmer. So.
Is that your rooting, your grounding?
Yes.
That you told me
yes.
you do?
yes.
Yeah.
Midwives, we have to ground and
Yeah.
center.
I loved hearing that though.
Yeah, so I think that shift that, well, even professionally, I was able to do that. Parenting wise, I wasn't. I really, really, really struggled when my kids were little.
With feeling dysregulated. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so many moms that are gonna watch this and be like, yeah, I'm in that too. Was there a shift was there a point in time where that shifted for you or it got better? And if so, like what do you attribute to that?
Yes, and again, me saying my mothering and my midwifery are very integrated for me, in that with my third baby, my youngest, I really started practicing attachment parenting, and that helped me regulate. Like it definitely, I think, helped him, but it also helped me. It was kind of a re-parenting of myself in a way, in that with my first, he came home from the hospital and we put him in his own room in his crib, right?
Day one or just like?
Day one.
No way.
Day one. Yep. Here's your room, baby.
We'll be here and you'll be over there.
Yeah, and they're really close together.
Yeah.
But I would go and I spent most of his first year sitting in a rocking chair in that room. He never slept in our bed. And by my third baby, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it was survival, like how can we get the most sleep?
Totally.
But even all the way halfway through elementary school, he would just come and crawl in bed with me. And that really helped both of us, I think.
Yeah.
So I think just that, I did not at all grow up home birth midwife. In fact, I was like, who the heck would do that? That's crazy. I said that when I was pregnant with my first.
Oh yeah.
I did. But I
pain
think
medicine?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's just
but
so
even
strange.
just the whole like, I don't want my kids sleeping in bed with me, and
not appealing.
Yeah, I wasn't breastfed, and I knew I wanted to breastfeed, but like just that shift, I think people wouldn't know that about me.
Oh. I would never have known that side of you because I see this current side.
Yeah.
The attachment parenting, for those that don't know what that is, can you explain? I mean, you mentioned like co-sleeping and breastfeeding. I know those are components of it. But can you explain a little bit more about what that was and any other things you did?
Yeah. So attachment parenting is the idea that by meeting a child's needs as they express them, we're helping to form secure attachment rather than like anxious or avoidant attachment patterns. And it's basically that by meeting specifically a baby, but also child, meeting their needs in a timely manner, right? Like a baby, you want to meet them fairly immediately.
Yeah.
A toddler, I mean, we're not their slave, right? So like there are moments where you're like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
But just by meeting their needs as they're expressed, that they can develop trust and security in knowing that their needs are going to get met. So if I'm meeting my infant's needs as they're expressed, they learn, because they're completely dependent, they learn that they can trust and that their needs will be met, so that by the time they're a toddler, when I say to them, hold on a second, mommy's gotta run to the bathroom, they're not freaking out, they understand, okay, she's gonna get to me soon. So, and it largely helps regulate.
Yeah.
So, anyone with a newborn baby, you put that baby on your chest and they're gonna fall asleep eventually because they hear your breathing and your heart rate. It helps regulate their nervous system. So for me, attachment parenting, it helps regulate him, but it also helps regulate me.
I see that.
And it was very much a missing component for me.
It makes me like not help but think, and maybe I'm just drawing a line that's not supposed to be connected here, but like with the first way you parented, and not that there's anything wrong with what Cassie said, because I know that's so common with what, that's not what I'm trying to say.
No.
But maybe there was a disconnect, at least for your soul, that you found in doing it a more connected way that was just healing for you, and that beautiful natural process was calming to your nervous system.
And I don't even look at how I kind of say, like, joke about that I, put him in his own room his first day home. But that was where I was in the moment, so I don't look at that as a wrong choice. That was the choice that I knew to make, right? So like, I'm not beating myself up about it or telling other moms if they're doing that they're wrong. That's where they're at, and that's totally fine. And they might go the other way even, from like co-sleeping to being like, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm very much someone who's like, wherever someone is at, if they're consciously making that choice, then they're in the right place for them. So I'm not saying like attachment parenting is the only way to go, but for me, it was what I needed. Yeah.
That was like, yes, okay, that's the point that I was trying to make that was going faster in my head of like, it sounds like Cassie's experience, there was this disconnect she found later between the mother the mother she was being and then the mother she wanted to be through finding attachment parenting. I feel like you came full circle and were able to express like what you needed.
Yes, what I needed and who I wanted to be as a mother. I mean, I was born in the 70s, so like I was spanked, I was grounded, and you know, like
more authoritarian parents.
Yes, very authoritarian, and it wasn't who I wanted to be. But when my first was born, I didn't know how to get to where I wanted to be. So I went back to the patterns that I was raised in, and it was very triggering for me to be living out the other side of that relationship. So, and it wasn't like an overnight switch, it was a gradual, you know, I feel like even still, now with my kids as teenagers, I'm still having moments where I'm like,
noticing old programming, things come up.
Yes, and figuring out how to deal with it in a more healthy, connected way. And what's fascinating is I see it with my oldest. Like, he was very independent, and my joke was that I was joke about stuff, right? So my joke was like, he doesn't come in the middle of the night or come get me unless something's really wrong. Like, I have this memory, he was probably 8, and I'm sleeping, and he wakes me up, standing at the side of my bed, and he goes, "Mom," and I open my eyes, and he throws up all over me. So like, that's, he did not come to me unless he really needed me. Whereas last night, he had gone to a show with my husband, and now he has a girlfriend, my 17-year-old, so he took her. And I was asleep, like falling asleep in bed when they got home, and he came in and wanted to tell me all about it. And that they had bought matching bracelets, and that da-da-da-da-da. And so even now, I'm finding my relationships with them evolving because I'm still learning how to mother the way that I want to mother. So I think that's something. I think a lot of times we look at people and think like, oh, they have it together, or they've reached this.
Scratch the code. It's
great. Yes. Instead of acknowledging that it's like this winding path, and that we're continually learning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a continual process and journey. You would think, because I'm, you're much farther ahead in your mothering journey. I have a 5 and a almost 2-year-old, and I'm like, at this point, you just might assume that a mom's like found her groove and everything's great. And while that could be true, because you have adopted a conscious way of viewing motherhood, I feel like you've continued to evolve alongside your children, and it's such a beautiful, like, symbiotic relationship of you learning together. And I love that personally as a modeling tool for your children, just seeing their mother in process and like alongside them. Just a great example. It's a gift to see ourselves evolve. I don't know that everyone would understand that concept of matrescence. Like, that motherhood changes you, but if you've really gotten in touch with like the spiritual, emotional, deeper ways that it can change you, if you open to that, it's intense. It's intense, and it never ends.
It doesn't end.
It's like encouraging and discouraging. It's beautiful. It's like, okay. Yes. So there's no perfect pinnacle to reach. You're always going, but I think it's the gift of a lifetime to see our own evolution and those in people we love. And it just made me smile to hear about the ways that you've been able to meet yourself and see yourself in new ways as a result of motherhood.
Yes, definitely. I don't think I don't know, but I don't think if I hadn't had those circumstances that I would have grown this way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. So that's a positive of motherhood that I just wanted to name, because I was very much like you in that it just wasn't on my radar to be a mom. And I have friends that, late 20s, early 30s, like, I don't know if motherhood's for me. But and I have a number of reasons, some of similar to yours, fear of birth even, like fear of childbirth. I was very much raised around that. But if I would have known the level of depth and change that motherhood would have awakened in me, I don't know if I would have been like, yes to motherhood, but I never even knew that beautiful gift as a result. I just saw like, I'm giving my life away, my freedom's gone, my body's changing. Just life as I knew it was over and never going to go back to being the same, and then all that comes with motherhood. I was viewing it from this very empty cup place and not, holy cow, it has grown me as a person in a way that I don't know that things like the church and spirituality ever could have, because there's nothing that takes you to the ends and the beginnings of yourself like motherhood.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So,
yes.
And I wanted to full circle back just for a minute to name, whenever you were talking about your changes from baby number 1 to baby number 2, in case this could be helpful for someone listening, one thing that I pulled from that at least one way I viewed it is, if you're noticing anxiety as a mother, there's nuance to this conversation, but if you're noticing anxiety and parts of yourself showing up that you're not proud of, or that don't feel authentic and true, there's a chance that it could be because you're doing something out of alignment. It could just simply be that you're mothering or showing up in your life out of alignment. And so it could just be you getting clear on like, where do things feel off? Because when you're in alignment, you feel more peace. And I just think of how much differently you felt in motherhood third time around when you were showing up and like advocating, and maybe there was some misalignment before that. Once you kind of found that way through experimentation, things felt more easeful. So it could just simply be that. I just wanted to name that.
Yes.
Something maybe helpful. Yeah. Okay, midwifery. I kind of said midwifery and Yeah. So good though. I love talking to you. What do I want to ask about midwifery? Because there's just a lot here. Okay. So I asked Cassie just a minute ago about if we really knew you in your midwifery mothering journey, what would we know? I think there's a mask, as in what you see from the outside about midwifery, that is in society. We're starting to get more awareness about doula and like midwifery care and just the natural physiologic birth process, but I still find that it's often overwhelmed by, I don't want to say traditional, because traditionally we didn't have babies in hospitals, but like the more modern narrative of birth is an emergency. It's what we see on TV, instant, water breaks, you're flying into the hospital, emergency C-section, it's scary. And so midwifery, having a baby at home, that sounds dangerous and alarming. At least for me it did years ago. How could you do that? And so I'm wondering if you, Cassie, could pull back the mask and shed a light on what you view as some of the top things we might get wrong as a society still about midwifery care.
Okay.
I'd love to hear.
I would love to.
Pull back that mask.
Yes. I think a big one is around education. So midwifery is not widespread and regulated in the United States. It's not integrated well into our mainstream medical system here. And that was quite intentional, honestly, in the early 1900s, shifting birth from home to hospital. There was a really intentional shift there. And so I think a lot of what happened there is still residual, which is thinking that midwives are like, I don't know, witches out in the boonies. I joke sometimes that if anyone's seen the movie Brave, have you seen Brave?
Oh, we just watched it last week. The
I
Disney
love it.
movie?
It's so cute. Yes, but you know the witch out in the cottage and the broom's going on its own. She's got all her
That's
bears.
what they think about.
That's what I used to think a midwife was that. And in actuality, midwives are highly educated in birth. I'm not highly educated in all aspects of nursing because I'm not a nurse. I don't need to do that. Nursing deals with surgery and end of life and a lot of pathology, and that's not midwifery. Midwifery is specifically the clinical care of moms and babies throughout fertility journeys, childbirth, postpartum.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So I think that's a big one. That most midwives are very, very well educated. So that's a big one, I think. Second, I think safety. There just came out a Cochrane review, which is really exciting. Cochrane review is like an analysis of studies, like research. So it's kind of like an overview of research. And there just came out a review that looked at midwifery care in countries where it is really well integrated, like the UK, South Africa. I think they included Australia, New Zealand. A lot of countries in Scandinavia have very mainstream midwifery care. And it has incredible birth outcomes, far better than mainstream medical. The United States spends more money than any country in the world on maternity care, and our statistics for maternal and infant mortality continually fall. Like, we are doing worse and worse every year. Still. It's horrible. It's horrible. So, and what I tell people oftentimes when they push back that, you know, I'm a midwife, is that out of hospital midwives are doing 2% of births in the United States. We are not the ones skewing the statistics. It's hospital birth. 2%, even if every birth I ever attended was awful, which is not the case at all, but 2% can't skew. It's what's happening in our hospital system. So I think that's important to realize too, is that home birth with a trained attendant is as safe, if not safer, than birthing in the hospital. I will acknowledge that integration of care matters. So like the UK, Netherlands, where they're doing really high percentages of out of hospital and midwifery births, are gonna have better outcomes because there's integration, communication support with the hospital system. And in the United States, that's very much reliant on the community. Here in Las Vegas, it's okay. It's hit or miss, the support. So we have great support in some areas, like we have a high risk practice that's really supportive. Certain hospitals are really supportive, but then we also have pockets where we have a lot of
resistance,
pushback, and people that don't want to take a referral from me or don't want to have a conversation, and that creates risk. So collaboration creates safety, opposition creates risk. So it's not the midwives that are creating more risk, it's the lack of integrated care. So those I think are the two big ones. I think on a funny note, people think that home birth is like a scene out of some crazy horror movie or something, when in actuality it's really quite sweet, and you know, you get in bed and it looks like nothing happened except you have a baby in your arms. And maybe a birth pool that needs to get you know, put away, but it's pretty, you know, pretty cute and peaceful and sweet. And birth itself is very dramatic. Home birth I don't think is any more dramatic than anywhere else. I actually think it's probably a little less. Because we're not all hysterical about things that are normal.
Totally. Yes. So. And I like to think that at least the home birth moms that I know now, we're very intentional about one, choosing that. You don't just like, for the most part, unless you're Cass, stumble into home birth or an accident, like, okay, the baby's coming home, like, I chose it. I wanted to create my birth space to be an oasis. So even in and of itself, like, your room is intentionally designed, your space, to feel really good, because we know we're not reaching for a medication to help us like relax. So I had to find ways to maybe that's hypnobirthing or hiring a doula or, you know, setting the stage, but I definitely think that that's where home birth, you might see the peaceful pictures. A lot of people are like, oh, so you're automatically having a birth tub. That's what people will often see in pictures, is the birthing tub. And yeah, I mean, when you have sore muscles, you get in a jacuzzi. So think about like the warm water. It's so relaxing when you're in like some of the most pain of your life.
My 2 home births I had in a tub.
Both were in a tub.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would say probably 2/3 of my clients use water in some way, whether it's getting in the shower or getting in a tub.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say probably only half birth in a tub, if that.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually frequently have moms, so some people are like, do I have to birth in a tub? No, you don't have to. But I really enjoyed it, as did you, I think. Yeah.
Once I was in, I just didn't want to get out.
Totally.
You know, and I remember in the birthing center back in St. Louis, I ended up just gravitating towards a hot shower, like on my back, because I had the back labor. But then I got into the tub, and then you can't birth in a tub in the hospitals. And at the time in St. Louis, there was a risk. I don't know what the risk would be, but so I had to get out, and that was really hard to tell a woman in labor, like, this is where I'm relaxed and peaceful, but I have to get out.
Yes.
Okay, can you just explain the difference? I know we talked about this a little before, but like around myths and like confusion, the difference between an OB and a midwife, and then a doula and a midwife.
Okay, so an OB is a surgeon. They went to medical school, they're a doctor. Their specialty is surgery, honestly. So if we need surgery, if we need a surgical birth, we want an OB.
Absolutely.
Definitely. But they are not experts in physiological birth. A midwife is a clinical care provider, so responsible for health and well-being of mom and baby, but an expert in physiological birth, meaning birth without all the interventions that happen in the hospital. Most midwives at some point have seen a mom from first contraction through having a baby. Normally, I'm showing up when someone's in active labor, as opposed to an OB in a hospital is coming in when someone's already pushing.
Yeah.
They might come in and check for 10 minutes or come break water or something, but they're not there. There's not that continuity by your side the whole time. They're coming in for the end. They might suture up and then they're out. Sometimes they're in the room for 10 minutes. An hour would be a long time in the hospital for that. Yeah. But their specialty really is surgery. So that is the main difference there.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yes.
I don't think many people know that.
Yes, yeah. So I'm always fascinated when someone says, oh, I want an unmedicated natural birth in the hospital with this OB. And there are definitely people that I'll look at and say, those two things don't go together.
With that OB.
With that OB.
Because they just don't believe in that process.
Yes, like they have a high cesarean rate, or they have a high episiotomy rate, or that's not someone who's an expert in physiological birth. Doesn't mean you're not going to have a birth with a healthy baby, it's just probably not going to happen in hands-off physiological way. So, yeah. And then the difference between a midwife and a doula is that a midwife is a clinical care provider. So I am monitoring blood pressure and ordering labs and evaluating ultrasound results and doing all of those things to look at the clinical picture. Having said that, I do those things, but it doesn't feel like you're talking. I'm not a doctor, so it's not like you're talking to a doctor. Like, hey, I got your lab results back. They look really good. You want to talk through them? Yeah, okay, so this is this. Are you familiar with what that is? Let me tell you what that does. And then we're looking at wellness. So I am concerned with lab values and fetal heart rate and blood pressure as an expression of wellness and supporting that through really natural means, whether that's plant medicine, lifestyle factors, homeopathy.
Nutrition.
Nutrition.
Yeah.
We talk nutrition a lot. A doula is support. So your midwife should be supportive. Honestly, your OB should be supportive. But your doula, their job is support. They do not work for your midwife. So sometimes, or your OB, they might have contrary opinion or advice. But your doula is informational support, emotional support, physical support. That's really what they're doing. So clinical is not the job of the doula.
Yeah, because even like I was just thinking, even when my daughter was born, I don't know if you had to give her breast, but you had this thing there. Like a doula wouldn't have that in their kit,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
You were trained on like infant breathing.
Yes. May I share that?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes. We did actually give her some breast.
Okay.
I don't think it was immediately at birth. Maybe.
No,
maybe.
I was in
but
the
definitely
bed.
you were in the bed.
I
yes,
moved to the
I
bed,
remember
so
that.
I already
yes.
passed the placenta and
yes.
stuff.
Yes. She just needed a little bit of help continuing to clear. She was doing well, but we did do breast. And no, I'm trained in neonatal resuscitation, so it's helping babies transition from getting oxygen through the umbilical cord to breathing room air. And she just needed a little bit. She was doing pretty well, and then she needed a little bit of help there.
Yeah.
So yes, that is something you had a doula at her birth. That's something your doula would not do. She might have gone to that class just on the off chance. Sometimes doulas go to that training on the off chance that maybe they end up being the only person at a birth, but that's not their job and it's not their expertise. Yeah.
No, that's such a great breakdown, and I wanted to share that extra skill even post baby being delivered.
Yes.
Of like a way that you come in to help just check on our wellness and you're on it. Like you have those classes.
So prenatally, a midwife is doing everything that an OB would do. The difference as well is that it's rare. The way that I practice, I tell people in an emergency, which is honestly rare, and home, I will tell someone what to do. Aside from that, my job is to let you know what is really important and what's standard in care and what your options are, and to help you find how that fits for who you are as a person and a mother and a family. So I can offer gestational diabetes testing, and I do want to get your blood pressure to revisit. I do want to listen to fetal heart tones, and I'm trained and qualified to understand those things, not just do them, but to fully understand them and to communicate it. So I can do all of those things, but we also are doing them together as opposed to
collaborative.
Yes.
It's not power over.
Yes.
We're working.
Yes, it is collaborative.
There's no hierarchy.
Correct.
At least I never felt that way.
Yes.
And speaking of like the well visits, this was the couch that I hung out in a lot of the times.
The blue sofa.
Yeah, I wasn't sitting in like a bright light office. Like I was just hanging back on the couch, and you know, you were integrating like listening to the baby's heartbeat with my son even. Like that was just a sweet part of the visit that it felt different, and our visits were like an hour. And post baby, I wanted to speak to that too. You stayed at my house for 90 minutes to 2 hours, right? Maybe longer.
2 hours.
I don't
even,
I'm out of it. I'm just kind of bonding with baby bliss, but
I'm there at least 2 hours. Just tonight, we know that we run a little slow, so we're there about 2.5, 3. Probably.
Yeah, and I had to get stitched up, and Cassie did that up to a 2nd degree.
Yes.
So you even can, I didn't have to go to the hospital, thank God, but that's even something.
Yes.
Midwives.
So we're trained. I'm trained in handling any emergencies that come up. I'm trained in understanding what's normal and what's not normal, when to intervene, how to handle things like postpartum hemorrhage and babies that need help breathing and suturing and all of those things.
So comprehensive.
Yeah.
Like it's more than I think people realize. So
I've done it in a really loving way.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
my humanity felt seen. You know, like I felt cared for.
Yes.
I would love to ask you, I think we have time for one more question. I'll just flip the script on the original If We Really Knew You with midwifery. If we really knew you, what would we know about your midwifery journey?
Oh. Wow. I think that I'm quite open about my midwifery journey. I would say probably that my biggest struggle as a midwife is honoring my humanity. And I think most people come to midwifery because they want to be of service and they love moms or love babies. I actually started not out of a love of babies. I was the one where someone would give me their baby and I'd be like, cool, okay. Can I give it back now?
More about
Yeah,
the mom.
more about the moms.
Yeah.
But now I
Yeah.
think that my kids are older, now give me your baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, anytime someone's like, do you want to hold the baby? I'm like, yes, please.
Aw.
But because we feel very passionately and we want to honor, like you said, honor people's humanity in this huge experience, that I think oftentimes midwives, particularly for this is true for me, my humanity gets kind of the short end sometimes. So I think that honestly is the biggest struggle of being a midwife is how do I provide this care that I know that you deserve and I deserve and any
Yes.
mother deserves, but still honor myself and my family.
So
Yeah.
important, and I'm sure not an easy process.
No, and I find it's evolving. I had a discussion with a midwife this week who's been doing this probably 4 years longer than I have, and she was just like, "Ooh, I have to change how I'm doing it."
She said that?
Mhm.
Oh.
And we've been
Yeah.
having this
Cool. That's
conversation
great.
for a while,
Yeah.
but yeah, so trying to find a model of practice that honors that need for us to form relationship, but still be able to have our human needs met.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed our conversation.
Same. Thank you. It was
I love
fun.
all like the twists and turns. You know, I never know what's gonna come up on these. You know, just a general idea, but it was such a blessing to hear new parts of your story. Like, I don't like to say the backside because you know I don't see you as surface level, but like the outside things, these fun new details, and then to go deeper and to hear more of your heart, your like journey into motherhood, some of the things that caught you by surprise, the way you've evolved, motherhood, midwifery, and beyond. Like, it's such an honor to have you here, and thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I'm so glad we found each other, and
Same.
yeah, and now we're still connected.
Yes.
Thank you all for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I always enjoy hearing from you. So if you would like to share any feedback with me, you can find me on Instagram at mrsbeth_more or email me, bethmoreco@gmail.com. Any feedback, thoughts, if you want to be featured, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.